All right, so today we're diving into a story that I bet you think you know already,
Oh, yeah.
The Lion and the Mouse.
Yeah,
But
everyone's heard this one, right?
right, but there's always more to these classic tales than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a deep dive into this one today.
I love it.
So we all know the basic plot. Lion gets caught, little mouse helps him out, kindness prevails, happy ending.
Yeah, seems pretty straightforward.
But what is it about this story that makes it resonate across cultures and time periods?
That's a good question. Well, one thing that I always find interesting about this story is how it, flips the script on power.
Oh, yeah?
You know, we expect the lion, the king of the jungle, to be, all-powerful and untouchable.
Yeah.
But when he's caught in that hunter's net, suddenly he's vulnerable.
Yeah, he needs help from the least likely of creatures.
Exactly. And that's where I think our expectations get challenged, because the mouse, who we would normally dismiss as insignificant, becomes the hero.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how often do we misjudge others based on appearances?
Right. All the time, I'd say we make assumptions about people based on their size, their status, their job, whatever.
Totally. It's like we assume strength equals worth.
Wow.
But in this story, the mouse's small size is exactly what allows her to help the lion.
Exactly. She can slip through the net and gnaw through the ropes, things that the lion just can't do.
So the story is saying, don't underestimate anyone.
Yeah, and everyone has something to offer.
Exactly. But here's where I get a little tripped up.
Okay.
The lion, at first, totally scoffs at the mouse's offer of help. Like, yeah, right, little mouse, you're going to save me?
Yeah, he's pretty arrogant at first.
Totally. But then he's humbled by the experience and learns his lesson. It feels almost too neat and tidy, you know?
I see what you mean. But I think the lion's change of heart, while convenient for the moral of the story, is also, believable.
Yeah.
Think about it. We've all been in those situations where someone we maybe underestimated totally surprised us with their abilities.
For sure.
You think you have it all figured out, and then someone comes along and shows you a completely different way of doing things.
That happens to me with technology all the time.
Uh-huh. Me too.
You know, you think you're the tech-savvy one, and then your grandma swoops in and fixes your computer in, 2 seconds.
Right. It makes you reevaluate, who the real expert is.
Totally. So that shift in perspective, that's where the real power of the Lion and the Mouse lies.
I think so. It's not just about being nice. It's about recognizing the potential in everyone, even those we might initially overlook.
Okay, so we've got this theme of underestimating others, but then there's also this whole element of, what goes around comes around.
Karma.
Yeah, the lion's kind to the mouse later because she was kind to him earlier.
Right.
But is that true generosity, or is it just strategic kindness?
That's a really good question. If we're only being kind because we expect something in return, are we really being generous?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, the story seems to say, be nice to everyone. You never know when you might need their help.
Right, a purely practical approach.
But on the other hand, it could be saying that genuine kindness, without expecting anything back, is what makes the world a better place.
It could be either or both. That's what I love about this story. It doesn't give us easy answers.
Yeah, it leaves us thinking, okay, so we talked about the lion's arrogance and the mouse's surprising strength.
Yeah.
What else stands out to you about these characters? Let's dig a little deeper.
Okay, well, with the lion, I think it's important to remember that he's not just a one-dimensional symbol of power.
Okay.
He actually embodies this vulnerability that, honestly, I think we all feel at times. No matter how strong or successful we are, there are always going to be moments when we need help.
For sure. It makes them relatable, right?
Definitely. He's not just this fearsome beast. He's a complex character with his own struggles and weaknesses.
Totally. And that actually makes his change of heart more believable. He's been in that position of needing help, so he understands where the mouse is coming from.
Right. He can empathize.
It's like that saying, you can't really understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Yeah. And the lion quite literally gets a taste of what it's like to be the weaker one, the one in need.
Which makes me wonder, if the lion represents those in power, does this story suggest that experiencing vulnerability could make leaders more compassionate?
Ooh, that's a fascinating thought.
That's like a little nudge toward empathy for those in charge.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about the lion, but what about the mouse?
Yeah, what makes her such a compelling character?
Well, for me, it's her unwavering belief in herself. She doesn't let the lion's initial dismissiveness get to her.
Oh, yeah.
She knows she has something to offer, even if it seems small.
She's persistent. Even though the lion laughs at her at first, she still helps him.
Exactly. And that's so important, I think, especially for anyone who's ever felt underestimated or overlooked.
So the mouse is like a champion for the underdogs.
Absolutely. She's proof that size and power aren't the only things that matter.
Right. It's about having the courage to use your strengths, whatever they may be.
And for our listeners out there, I want you to think about those times when you felt underestimated or overlooked. Did those experiences fuel your determination? Did they make you want to prove yourself even more?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Hmm.
Because honestly, we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've all felt like the little guy, the underdog. But maybe those experiences are what shape us.
Maybe they make us more resourceful, more resilient.
I think so. And that's a powerful message to take away from The Lion and the Mouse. It's not just about kindness and reciprocity.
Right.
It's also about finding strength in those moments when you feel weak.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even our perceived weaknesses can be our greatest strengths.
And using those strengths to make a difference in the world.
Oh, I love that.
You know, one thing that's always struck me about The Lion and the Mouse is how adaptable it is.
Oh, for sure.
Like, this story's been around forever, and it still feels relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
How is that even possible?
That's a good question. You know, I think it's because that core message, the idea that even the smallest person can make a huge impact.
Yeah.
It's just so universal. It transcends cultures and time periods.
Right, like we all get it.
Exactly.
It's like a blank canvas that each generation can use to tell its own story.
I like that, a blank canvas.
We have the classic version with the animals, sure. But then there are all these modern retellings that use the same framework, you know, the lion and the mouse,
Yeah.
to explore different ideas.
Exactly. Like, imagine setting this fable in a corporate office.
Oh,
The lion could be like the CEO,
okay.
and the mouse is like, I don't know, some low-level employee with a brilliant idea.
Ooh, I like that.
Suddenly, the story becomes about, like, innovation and recognizing talent.
Yeah. Or what about, like, social movements? The lion represents the establishment,
Okay.
and the mouse is like the people fighting for change.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It highlights the power of collective action.
Hmm.
You know, how seemingly small voices can band together and make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's really about much more than just animals helping each other.
Right. It's a framework for understanding power
Yeah.
and the potential for change.
And how those dynamics play out in all different areas of life.
It's like a seed
Okay,
that can be planted anywhere and still grow.
I like that.
Makes you wonder, like, what other modern-day lions and mice are out there?
That is a great question. For our listener, I'd say take a look around.
Yeah.
Think about your own life.
Yeah.
Where do you see those power imbalances? Where do you see somebody or something being underestimated?
It's like a call to action.
Yeah, I think so.
Pay attention to the mice in your life.
Mm-hmm. The ones quietly making a difference.
Yeah, the ones who have the potential to do big things if we just give them a chance.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, recognize the lion in yourself.
Okay.
Like, when are you the one holding a position of power? You know, even in small ways.
Yeah.
And are you using that power to help others?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or are you using it to maintain the way things are, you know, the status quo?
It's like a challenge to be humble and empowered at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
To be aware of your own strengths,
Mm-hmm.
but also to create space for other people's strengths to shine.
Yes, I love that. It's tricky, that balance.
It is.
But it's so important for creating a better world, a more just world, a fairer world.
Couldn't agree more. This whole conversation is making me think about all those times that I've personally felt like the mouse.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those times when I was overlooked or underestimated.
We've all been there.
And I have to admit, sometimes those experiences, they light a fire under me.
Yeah.
You know, a determination to prove those doubters wrong.
I feel that.
It's like, you underestimate me at your own peril.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how being underestimated can actually fuel our passion.
And it's like, oh, you think I can't? Watch me.
Exactly. And it can make us more sensitive to other mice out there.
Oh, totally. Like, you start to see the world through a different lens.
Mhm.
You start to see the potential in everyone.
Right. And you're less likely to make those snap judgments based on appearances.
Exactly. So that's another gift of the lion and the mouse.
What's that?
It gives us a new way of seeing the world, a more compassionate way.
That's the power of a good story.
It can change our perspective,
Yeah.
open our minds to new possibilities.
And even inspire us to action.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the lion and the mouse, simple as it is,
Mm-hmm.
has done that for me, for sure.
Me too.
It reminds me that Even the smallest act of kindness, like helping someone in need,
Yeah.
it can have these ripple effects that go way beyond ourselves.
Right, that's all connected.
And those ripples, those acts of generosity and understanding,
Yeah.
they create a more supportive world.
For everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about how adaptable this fable is and how it's still relevant today.
Right.
We even talked about our own personal experiences.
Yeah.
But I'm still kind of hung up on this one question.
What's that?
We know this story has resonated with people for centuries, across different cultures, different times. But why? What is it about this specific fable that's so captivating?
That's the big question, isn't it? You know, I think it comes down to a few things.
Okay.
First, it taps into our sense of fairness. You know, like we instinctively root for the underdog.
Yeah.
And the mouse, she's totally the underdog here.
Totally. And she wins.
Exactly. And that's satisfying for us.
Right. It makes us feel good.
It fulfills that desire we have for justice and balance.
It's like a mini rebellion against the established order.
Yeah, it's a reminder that power isn't always absolute.
And that even those who seem powerless can make a difference.
Exactly. And secondly, I think this fable offers us hope. You know, in a world that can sometimes feel really chaotic and unpredictable.
Yeah.
The Lion and the Mouse gives us this simple but powerful message that even small acts of kindness can have a huge impact.
It's reassuring, right?
It is. It's like, hey, even in the darkest of times, there's still potential for good.
And for things to turn around.
Exactly. And then finally, I think there's the emotional element.
Okay.
Like, even though it's a short and simple story,
Yeah.
it evokes a lot of different emotions, you know, surprise, amusement, tension, relief, and ultimately satisfaction.
It's like a little emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. It takes us on a ride.
And it connects with us on a deep level,
Mm.
reminding us about empathy and humility.
And how we're all interconnected, you know? No one exists in isolation.
Wow. We've really unpacked a lot from this simple story.
We have.
We've talked about the characters, the themes, the cultural impact, and even the emotions.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this fable.
But you know what? I have a feeling there's still more to discover.
I think you're right. There's one more perspective I'd like to offer.
Okay.
One that connects this ancient tale to our modern world, you know, to the challenges and opportunities we face today.
Ooh, this is getting good. All right, listeners, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to wrap up our deep dive into The Lion and the Mouse with one final thought-provoking layer. Okay, so we're back, ready to finish up our deep dive into The Lion and the Mouse.
I'm excited for this last part.
Me too. You mentioned that there's one final layer to this story.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about individual acts of kindness, but what if this fable is actually about, like, society as a whole?
Okay, a treat.
Like, what if it's a commentary on how systems work and how they could be different?
Now that you mention it, I can see how the lion and mouse could represent different groups within a society.
Right, like different social classes or those with power versus those without.
Okay, but how does that connect to, actual change, like systemic change?
Well, think about it. The lion, he's all about established power.
Yeah, top of the food chain, king of the jungle.
Exactly. Used to getting his way. Whereas the mouse represents, like, the little guy.
The underdog.
Yeah, the one who's often overlooked or dismissed.
That's like that classic haves and have-nots thing.
Exactly. And the lion and the mouse kind of flips that on its head.
It does.
It shows us that those who are at the margins, the mice of the world,
Okay.
they often have these unique skills and perspectives that are actually essential for the whole system to function well.
It's like the story saying, hey, you in power, you're missing out.
Right. You think you have it all figured out, but you need those different viewpoints.
True strength comes from recognizing the value of everybody.
Exactly. Not just those at the top.
So it's less about the lion just changing his own attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the entire jungle realizing that they all need each other.
Precisely. It's about shifting from a mindset of competition to one of collaboration.
Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? Like, how do we apply this to the real world?
That's the challenge, isn't it? But I think it starts with awareness.
Awareness of what?
Of those who are consistently being overlooked or undervalued. Like whose voices aren't being heard. Whose contributions are we missing out on because we haven't created a system that truly includes them?
Those are some big questions.
They are, but they're important ones. And it's not about just being nice to people.
Yeah, it's bigger than that.
It's about actually changing the structures, the systems, so that everyone has a chance to thrive.
Okay, so it's not just individual actions. It's about looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it might mean redistributing power, giving more agency to those who have traditionally been excluded.
So it's like instead of just having the lion make all the decisions, we create a system where the mouse has an equal say.
Right. Because her perspective is valuable, even essential.
This is making me think about all sorts of things like workplaces, communities, even government.
Yeah, it applies everywhere.
Like, are we creating spaces where everyone can contribute their talents?
That's the goal.
Or are we still stuck in this old way of thinking where only certain voices matter?
That's what we need to examine.
You know, it's amazing to me how this simple fable can open up such complex ideas.
It is, isn't it?
Like, it's a story about a lion and a mouse, but it's really about so much more.
Exactly. It's about power and justice and the potential for real change.
And it gives us hope.
It does, because it reminds us that even small actions can make a difference.
Right, like the mouse gnawing through those ropes.
Exactly. And if we all start doing our part, who knows what kind of world we could create.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on, I think.
I agree.
We've come a long way from that simple story of the lion and the mouse.
We have, but it's been a fascinating journey.
Absolutely. We've explored individual kindness, societal change, and even a bit of personal reflection along the way.
And hopefully our listeners have found it thought-provoking and maybe even inspiring.
I hope so, too. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into The Lion and the Mouse.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, even the smallest among us can make a difference.